Del Lewis ran frantically around his home, crashing into various walls and objects in a desperate attempt to escape the creature. It had hunted him from far away, and now here it was, stalking him in his own home. He tucked his revolver into the back of his pants. There were only 1 or 2 bullets remaining, and the creature didn't seem to be fazed by the gunshots. He heard the rapid footsteps of the creature enter the house as Del rushed up the stairs. He would hide in the attic. It was difficult to access if you didn't know where the stairs were. As he closed the hatch to the attic, he slowly eased himself down onto the floor, against the wall in a dark corner. He heard the creature roving around the house below. Blood seeped from beneath Del's shirt. Trying to escape the creature earlier, he had fallen on a fence and sustained significant damage to his abdomen. His breathing shallowed as he tried to compose himself. Del had lived a debauched life. He had robbed, killed. Many, if not all, the major crimes he committed through his life went unpunished, for the most part. He chuckled to himself. Until now, he supposed. He groaned as he lifted himself up quietly, so he was propped up more vertically on the wall. He remembered the first man he killed. The fear in his eyes as he pulled the trigger and snuffed out the man's life. An innocent man. At the wrong place and the wrong time. Interrupted a robbery that he shouldn't have. And he paid in blood. Del hadn't planned on killing him. It just happened. But even still, even Del himself couldn't deny that pulling the trigger on that man gave him some kind of sick joy. A satisfaction that couldn't be replicated by anything else. And that man was not the last. Throughout his life, he killed plenty. Many of them rivals of his employer, but some of them were innocents, like the first man. There were also women, kids, men, caught in the crossfire. A part of Del wished he desperately felt guilt over the things he did. He knew he should feel guilty, but he just didn't. He heard the faint rumblings of the creature, whatever it was, as it tore through the house looking for him. What a fearful sight, this monster. A torso and limbs dark as night itself, almost like it was wearing a cloak made of darkness. When it gave chase, it dropped on all fours and moved quickly like an insect. The only thing visible in the darkness was its pale, white, mask-like face. A frightening creature indeed. Del was losing more and more blood. He removed his revolver from his pants and set it down next to him. If that thing tried to get up here, he'd try once more to blow its head off. As his breathing became shallower still, he remembered his wife, Maria. He was amazed he managed to find someone who tolerated him, who took him for what he was. But in a way, he had killed her too. He had started a fight at a nightclub. Someone pulled a gun. In all the commotion, the shot went off, and she was gone. That thing was on the second floor of the house now, still searching for him. It would keep searching until it found him. And once it found him, who knows what it would do. It almost seemed like the more frightened he was, the more powerful the creature became. Like it was feeding off his fear. And his level of fear was growing. As he remembered his past, the terrible things he did, the people he killed and lost, Del slowly began to feel the one thing he escaped all these years: guilt. Terrible guilt. Guilt over the people he robbed and beat up. Guilt over the lives he took, innocent or no. And massive guilt over the death of his wife. Tears welled up in his eyes. The creature was circling the entrance to the attic now, like it knew. It smelled his fear and his guilt, and it was coming to get him. Bullets wouldn't hurt this thing, this entity, this monster. Del knew what he had to do. He knew what he had to do to keep himself from the pain and the torture. He picked up the revolver and slowly lifted it. He pressed the muzzle of the gun against his head and felt the cold steel against his skin. He let his finger rest on the trigger. All of a sudden, he heard a squeaking sound coming from behind him. A hatch was opening, one with a faint glow, one he didn't know existed. A secret hatch built into the attic wall, and a woman crawled out. He immediately recognized her. It was Maria. She reached out to him.
"Come on, Del. I know a way out. Take my hand."
Wiping away the tears of guilt and fear from his face, Del smiled with relief as he took his wife's hand and crawled through the glowing entrance of the hatch. The door to the attic slowly opened. A pale white face entered first, examining the room. The rest of its spindly limbs entered the attic, spreading out in an unnatural way. It moved on all fours around the attic, its steps making an unsettling tapping noise. It stopped when it reached the dark back corner of the attic. There, in the corner, was Del's dead body, crumpled in a heap, blood oozing from a gunshot wound to the head, the revolver lying on the floor. The creature examined the scene for a moment, and then all of a sudden it stood on its legs, raising its arms into the air and enveloping the basement in darkness and shadow. The room quaked like it was being shook by a giant, and all that was visible of the creature through the mass of blackness was its pale white face, shaking at an inhuman speed. Slowly, the wound on Del's head began to close. Smaller and smaller his wound became, until it wasn't there at all. The creature moved close to Del's head. As Del began to regain consciousness, he heard the voice of this monster echo through the attic.
"Death is a luxury you cannot afford."
Del slowly began to open his eyes.
"Now run."